Hello Internet, and welcome to the Collective Arcana. We're a channel all about tabletop gaming, and today we're going to be continuing our series on the Pathfinder Second Edition classes with the Oracle. The Oracle is a spontaneous divine spellcasting class, but it's definitely got some pretty unique quirks to it. So let's go ahead and dive in with the normal stuff, which is the basic stats and progression. The Oracle gets 8 hit points per level, and its key ability score is Charisma. Pretty standard for your naturally spontaneous casters. What is interesting, however, is that the HP, along with several other numbers that I'm not going to state as we go, but it can vary based on some character choices that you might make with the class. So pretty wildly different options here. So the Oracle begins trained in Perception, and that will go up to Expert at level 11. For saving throws, they begin trained in Fortitude, and that will go up to Expert at level 9. They are also trained in Reflex, and that will go up to Expert at level 13. They begin Expert at Will Saves, and that will progress to Master at 7 and Legendary at 17. For skills, you'll begin trained in Religion, as well as 3 plus additional skills equal to your Intelligence modifier. You will also be trained in a skill based on your Mystery, which is something we'll get to here very shortly, but it's really sort of the defining concept of your character. Your attacks, you will be trained, and that will go up to Expert at 11, and you will get Weapon Specialization at level 13. You're only trained in simple and unarmed weapons, so probably not going to be a frontliner. For defense, it's pretty similar. You're trained in light and unarmored defense, and at level 13, that will go up to Expert. Like all spellcasters, you begin trained in the tradition of your class. In this case, it is Divine, and that will go up to Expert at level 7, Master at 15, and then Legendary at 19, which is pretty standard progression for spellcasters. So now we get into the weird stuff. This is still basic stuff that you're going to be getting, but it's where we're going to start to see those big variances in this class, and that is with your Mystery. So just to be completely upfront with you here, the Oracle is probably the most complicated class in the game, at least for me. Once you've actually got it built and you're playing it, it's pretty straightforward. But in terms of trying to explain some of the core concepts, because they can vary so wildly from thing to thing, so I'm going to be pretty general about a lot of it. I'm always pretty general, but with this, because there are so many mysteries already available, and there are so many things that come with each mystery, I'm just going to sort of here at the top explain that your mystery is a core concept. It's sort of at once a source and a conflict from your power that gives you your divine magic. And unlike pretty much any character really in the game right now, it can be as detrimental to you as it is beneficial. So, what I mean by that is that each mystery that you choose, and we'll go into a list of them, but each mystery that you choose is going to give you a passive benefit. It's also going to give you, come with some domains, it's going to come with a focus spell, it's going to come with, just some, it's very, very much like choosing a cleric, religion with a cleric, but decidedly different, because those focus spells, or revelation spells as they're called, as you use them, you become cursed just by nature of using those focus spells. And as you are cursed, you gain flaws related to the theme of your mystery. In addition, you will also gain increasing benefits as well, and situationally, you may find that the benefits are well worth the flaws, or vice versa. You may find that the flaws are really not worth the benefits that you're getting. It's really going to come down to a couple of things. Don't be turned off from that concept. It's weird, but in practice, once you actually have a character going, it's pretty straightforward for your individual character. But once you begin to progress there, you're going to basically find that not all builds of Oracle are going to like all mysteries that are available. And as such, you will see some huge differences in playstyle just based on the mystery that you choose. For the most part, they are very indicative and supportive of the types of roles that you're expected to play with those mysteries. That doesn't mean that you can't branch out. It just means that there's a little more structure out of the get-go than some of the other spellcasters may have. So, as you progress, as I said, you'll get positives as well as negatives. You'll also, once you have used 2 focus spells, you will be overwhelmed and you'll be unable to use focus spells anymore. And that's at your moderate, curse, they call it. Now, the benefit is you start with 2 focus spells. That's pretty cool. Not a lot of classes do, at least not without some serious finagling. Being a human often will help. But that can be pretty rough, especially when you're taking these penalties that are just going to they're going to stick around. They don't just go away a round or 2 after you've used your abilities, your focus spells. But you're also going to get those benefits that are going to stick around as well. And just like most things, you can rest to go back to the minor curse. You can never go back to no curse until you sleep for the day. But, on an adventuring day, once you hit that minor curse, once you've used your first focus spell, that's it. You're not going to get below there. At level 11, you'll be able to use up to 3 focus spells. And when you do, you're going to, again, be overwhelmed and unable to continue. But that's going to unlock your major curse as well, so you can go up to that major. Now, the interesting thing is that whenever you rest, you will be able to recover 2 focus spells, which is nice. Just you don't have to take a feat to do that. Most classes do have to have a feat to regain multiple focus spells. But once you reach that major curse level at level 11, you're going to be able to recover 2 focus spells every time you rest. At level 17, you're going to get your major curse, and you can actually recover, or rather, you're actually going to be able to go to the next up curse. And that's actually going to be universal across all of them. It's going to give you a Doomed to condition, but it's also going to allow you once every 10 minutes to re-roll a d20 check, some kind of check like that. Nice little fortune effect, but Doomed to is a big deal. And the rest of the pros and cons are going to be completely unique to your mystery. So, with all that said, that sort of crash course on what mysteries and revelation spells and how they work, let's go ahead and dive right into the types of mysteries that are on offer. The Ancestors mystery has you sort of haunted by your ancestors, and they sort of try to whisper in your ear and influence your actions by giving you sort of bonuses and penalties to different types of checks to try to encourage you to follow in their footsteps as opposed to another ancestor's footsteps. These can vary, where you're rolling a die to determine at any given time which one might be affecting you in terms of bonuses and penalties. This is certainly a weird one to work into play. I think it's probably because of that, maybe the most interesting, but it's certainly strange. As part of the benefit, though, you do get to select an extra ancestry feat at first level and another one at 11th. So especially some ancestries that have some really cool, unique options, that can be very, very appealing. But, most ancestries are going to have at least something worthwhile there. But it is, again, it's a pretty weird thing to build around, this idea of this character who you don't know minute to minute what you're going to be, or, encounter to encounter what you're going to be best at for the day. So definitely something to consider, and one of the, as I said, more difficult to make work, I think. By all means, let me know down in the comments. But just that unpredictability in terms of how to build your character even makes it pretty strange. But The Battle Mystery is going to give you proficiency with medium armor. It's also going to give you penalties if you're not striking something each round. Those penalties are going to continue to get worse, but it'll also boost your damage. You get an extra couple of damage, then it eventually goes to +6 as you get to the major curse. But you'll also gain fast healing as well. So, definitely some trade-offs as long as you're taking a very active role in frontline combat, which is not so distasteful once you have medium armor proficiency. It can be quite beneficial to you, and that's how a lot of them sort of work. Like if you're going with the flow of your curse, then it can be pretty minimal as long as you're building around it and planning for it. But definitely can still be problematic. The Bones Mystery will it's all about the dead, and it will allow you to. It's very necromantic. It'll allow you to choose to receive positive or negative healing at the daytime. They carefully left that open because some ancestry, or rather some heritages, like the Dhampir, begin with negative healing. But by being a Bones Oracle Dhampir, you could actually choose to every morning instead receive positive healing. So that's a fun little niche way out of a sort of complicated thing for the Dhampir. But in addition to that, you're also going to take diminished healing from any non-magical source, so like alchemy and treat wounds, for example. You're also going to become drained and wounded as you progress in that curse. You will gain bonuses to saves versus disease, death, poisons, and as well as get a little edge on recovery checks. So, pretty good. Next up is Cosmos. And Cosmos, the idea there is that you are sort of never quite in the prime material. You're a little bit ethereal all the time. Sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of a thing. So you're going to gain physical resistance to reflect that. You're also going to become enfeebled and extra susceptible to being pushed and shoved. You functionally, you have less weight. You even count as less bulk if someone were to carry you. But the other bonus there is you will get some big boosts to leaping and jumping, because again, you're so much lighter that it's a lot easier for you to, jump up to the, across a chasm or jump up to the next level, in a city or something. So again, trade-offs there. I think the Cosmos one is pretty interesting just in terms of flavor, and all of these will come with some pretty fun, not really mechanical, but just sort of flavor descriptors. And for the Cosmos one, your hair sort of floats and your clothing sort of never quite settles with gravity. Whereas like the Bones one, you begin to take on like the pallor of death, and your bones begin to stick kind of through your skin. And there's a lot of flavorful stuff there. There's a lot of these mysteries as well, so we're not going to dive too deep. But definitely just know that in addition to the mechanical effects, there's a lot of flavor coming with these as well. A Flames Oracle is going to increase their reflex saves by 1 stage. So earlier, I was giving the base progression. Functionally, you're going to start at Expert, and then when you would have jumped to Expert, you will instead jump to Master. So you'll always be a step ahead of most oracles on reflex saves. But as your curse begins to progress, you are going to be surrounded by illusory smoke, and then eventually flames that even others can see, and then eventually the flames become real enough to burn you and anyone near you. In addition to, as it heats up and becomes real fire, in addition to that, even from the lower levels, it's going to create concealment. Not just benefiting you, although from the second stage on it will, but at low stages it's to anyone that you're trying to target. So that can be very brutal, especially for something that typically likes to deal ranged damage if it's going to, like a caster. But the caveat is that any spell that you cast with the flame descriptor is going to cut through that concealment, so you won't have that mischance And that's pretty cool and flavorful, and it's really encouraging you to, shoot fire out wherever you can. But it is also a very limiting thing to have that constraint. So, again, it's the balance with the Oracle. A Life Oracle, this one is pretty wild to me, just in terms of how swingy it can be power-wise. You're going to get 10 HP per level instead of 8 HP. You're also going to receive less healing based on your level from any sort of magical or any sort of healing source, period. You will, from the second stage on, you will become immune to magical healing from any source other than yourself. But you're going to increase the healing dice of your heal spell from 8 to 12, which is a huge leap. I don't think even Cleric can match that. I think they top out at 10. And all of your spells can passively heal allies. At first it'll be, and that's not just a healing spell, but any spell, as long as it uses a spell slot. So if you cast, a haste spell on the party, you can select one person who would have been targeted by that spell to heal them. And that's pretty nice. You also, at the higher echelons, every time you cast a spell of at least 5th level or higher, you emanate the effect of a 3-action heal spell that's 4 levels lower. That's potentially a whole lot of nice passive healing to the party, especially remember you're rolling d12s instead of d8s. However, you take damage equal to the amount of healing that you roll for that dispersion. So everyone else gains that amount of HP and you lose it. So as you can see from what I described, this is a very powerful healer, but even with all the buffs, could still really wind up putting itself in a situation where it finds it's either too dangerous to cast a spell at all, or where it's really sort of taking a lot of risks there. I think that it's got a lot of potential and a lot of potential downfall as well. Probably more than I think any of the other ones. The Ancestry one can be a little difficult to work around, but in terms of lethality potential, I think the Life Oracle is tops for that in terms of swinginess for pros and cons, life and death struggle sort of thing. A Lore Oracle gets a really nice benefit. It gets an additional spell added to its repertoire for every spell level you have access to. That's not an additional spell slot, keep in mind, but it is an additional spell known, which, considering that most other spontaneous casters are looking at 3 per level, that's a 33% increase in your number of spells that you have access to, not including the wonkiness of signature spells and how many they can and can't count for, but that's a pretty big boost. You're going to pay for that pretty hard, though. You're going to lose the ability to defend yourself. You're going to take a penalty to your initiative, and then eventually that's going to make you constantly flat-footed. The idea is that you are just constantly bombarded by just your brain calculating and logging information, remembering things, up to and including the point where you become unable to speak. You become unable to speak, though you can comprehend anything, but it's very difficult for you to speak, and you take that chance to fail spellcasting that has verbal components as a result of that. So all those extra spells known, but potentially risking the ability to use them effectively. It's a pretty fun one. I think that more than any of the others, it would lend itself best to someone who opted not to use the mysteries. It is sort of not fun to not do that. You might as well at that point sort of just go play a sorcerer, but it's definitely not bad. Next and final that we have so far is the Tempest mystery, and this is a pretty good blaster one. It's not quite, I feel, as restrictive as the Flames. but you're going to be able to see through precipitation as well as like standing water like ocean or river without any difficulty. You're also going to deal a little extra damage, electricity damage, with any water or air type spells that deal damage naturally. So that's pretty nice. The drawback, the payoff there, is that you begin to, as your curse progresses, you're going to start giving off or having this sort of localized tornado around you, and that is going to reduce your ranged attack as well as impose a penalty on ranged attacks coming in, so it's sort of trade-offy. Up to and including eventually creating difficult terrain all around you. And this can be problematic, especially when you're a spellcaster and you don't want to be left alone. You want to be able to have allies come around you. That's going to get even worse because you'll also deal damage to anything that touches you. Now that sounds pretty good, unless there's another spellcaster or a champion or somebody trying to get to you to heal you or something like that, or provide a buff spell to you. Touch spells are going to count for that. So unless they want to, spend an extra action doing a reach spell or something, you could be hurting your allies anytime they try to help you. It's only a D6. It probably isn't too much to worry about really, but it is there and it is something to consider. So those are all the mysteries. Overall, I think that they're relatively imbalanced, actually, in terms of the drawbacks. Now, there is a lot to consider there. First of all is the types of gameplay options that they're all going to be suggesting to you can really put some variance and again allow you to mitigate some of the flaws with each one and play into some of the strengths. But there's also to consider, there's the domains that they give access to, as well as the revelation spells that are by default available within that mystery. Now, you only begin with one revelation spell, but 2 focus points, and then you have to use feats to pick up others. But, allowing for some difference in the power of those focus spells, I definitely think that there are some pretty clear, more dangerous, I won't say necessarily better or weaker, but definitely more dangerous mysteries than others. Do they offer the right amount of reward? I don't know. That's really going to come down to you so much of the time. Your group, your particular playstyle, the build you have in mind. But it's definitely interesting. So now let's talk about feats and builds. So the Oracle, like pretty much all spellcasters in Pathfinder Second Edition, you're going to get access to a suite of pretty standard sort of meta magic-y type feats. You're going to get Reach Spell, Extend Spell, Widen Spell. You're going to get cantrip expansions. You're going to get Spell Weapon. These are all pretty standard. So as far as what you get that's a little more specific to Oracle, there's quite a bit here. There are feats that will allow you to, of course, pick up new revelation spells, as we discussed before. There are also feats that will allow you to pick up revelation spells from other mysteries. And there are even some feats that will allow you to pick up domain spells like a cleric based on the domains that are given for each of the mysteries. There's 2, I believe, for each mystery. You'll be able to pick up those domain spells as if you were picking up like Domain Initiate for Cleric, but you're going to add them as revelation spells. So they are going to get that curse-bound trait that is what makes your curse progress. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'll leave that to you to decide. So it's really going to widen your options. I sort of feel like in terms of quantity and variety of focus spells available, the Oracle, because of feats like that, are definitely the widest ranging. There's a good reason. You're paying a lot as an Oracle every time you use your focus spells. As we said, strategically sometimes good, sometimes not that good, not that appealing. But it really does feel like the Oracle is very much this sort of special focus spell type of a class. You're also going to get spells to actually add spells to your spell list from other schools. Some of them you'll get, again, through those cleric domains. You'll be able to pick up a few of the granted spells from that domain, where the cleric would pick up spells from other schools. You'll also be able to just pick them up from just anywhere. So that's very cool. There's a couple feats that will allow you to mitigate or at least postpone some of the effects of your curse, which can be very handy in clutch moments, especially if something, just as a GM, a recurring villain that knows your particular brand of weakness may send something that counts on that type of weakness, and then so being able to alleviate that even for a few moments could be crucial in dire circumstances. Other than that, the Oracle gets a lot of sort of divination, replicating type effects. Of course, they get the spells as well, but they get a lot of things that feel very much like precognition. You can sort of get impressions on success or failure of a future action. You can get some nice reactions that make it feel like you're, sort of seeing multiple realities at once sort of thing, to help, but not just yourself, but also allies. There's a nice reaction that will protect you from divine magic, but is less or that will protect you from non-divine magic, but is less effective against divine magic. So there's a lot of really cool things there that make you feel like definitely make you feel like a lot more than just a strange-looking divine sorcerer. So what do I think? I think that the Oracle is probably, as I said earlier, the most complicated, at least in terms of the number of concepts that you're dealing with. It's already a spellcaster, and then it's now adding on these mysteries that have all these different riders on all these different types of actions. With that said, once you have actually built your particular Oracle, it's all very well laid out and it's all very easy to follow. There is some level of extra strategy that's definitely involved for using your focus spells because of those flaws and those benefits that may sometimes make you feel like you can't use them. But that's the beauty of it, is that even without these mysteries, if you choose not to, this is still a rock-solid, divine, spontaneous caster that can get many, many jobs done. In terms of buffing, support, or even primary healer. So don't feel like you've got to, but by all means, if you're not going to use them, you should probably just go play a divine sorcerer, or maybe even a cleric, whatever. So how do I feel about that? I think that it's a dangerous class, and I don't say that just to say it. I say it because the power is going to look really nice, but if you have a player, especially in a game like Pathfinder 2e, which at lower levels can be fairly lethal, even at some higher levels, it can be very swingy already. So then when you add on this additional very swingy mechanic, it makes oracles pretty risky. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for a newer player, especially somebody who's just new to games, period, but less so to the game itself. But it's definitely not new player friendly in terms of the amount of strategy and things like that, and not to mention all the moving parts. With that said, I think it's a really awesome class, and I think that people who are a little more experienced are going to, especially people who have already played a couple of spellcasters in Second Edition and are looking for either the extra oomph. Some of these abilities really take spellcasting, your power level with it, up pretty high. So maybe you're just looking for a little extra oomph with your spellcaster and you don't mind paying that extra strategy. Great class for that. One of my more experienced players is dying to play this. We're getting to higher level in our current campaign, and he's very much ready to jump on board with his Oracle. So we'll see how it goes. I haven't had any actual hands-on experience with an Oracle yet. As a GM, right now I'm looking at it thinking, oh man, am I going to kill you or are you going to kill you? But he's a good player. I'm going to trust him that he knows what he's doing. it's definitely got me sort of biting my nails. So please, all of you down in the comments who have an Oracle, definitely let me know. Is the extra power worth that give and take, that potential swinginess that can turn a bad situation even worse very quickly? Is it as much fun as it looks like? Because despite all my trepidations about it, it sure does look fun to me. So please let me know down there. Tell us about your Oracle, and tell us about your experiences, not just for the other people down there, but for me too. Like I said, I'm pretty curious how it actually plays out on the table. So that's it. That's the Oracle. Very weird, very unique class, spellcaster here in Pathfinder Second Edition. Really hope you enjoyed the video. Next up we have, I believe, Ranger, if my alphabet serves me. So Ranger will be next. We'll try to get that out to you pretty soon. Thank you so much for watching, and welcome to the collective. We'll see you next time. Bye.